Komets Corner is presented by Lee's Famous Recipe.
Up along the near side. Komets still have it. Up top. Here's a shot. Score! Score! Yes! 2-1! After the mugging by Schmerich, the Komets respond with a goal. 2-1.
Well, that was the high point of last week, unfortunately. But, man, what a high point it was. The Komets had them right where they want them. Up 2-1, an opportunity to close out the Central Division Finals at home. Of course, all the K's fans watching know how it eventually turned out. But Shane Albahrani joining us for our final edition of Komets Corner here in 2025. And, Shane, man, we got a lot to go over this past week of hockey. But that Darren Brady goal was amazing. And it gave the Komets that 2-1 lead. And what was the vibe around the Komets? Because, man, if you were a fan, you couldn't wipe the smile off a Komets fan's face, knowing that they could close out this series without ever having to go back to Toledo.
Yeah, disappointing for sure. After that night, everyone was feeling really well because how you won the game. I mean, 2-1 nail biter. You get one late, and you hang on, and you get the win, and then you go in to Game 4. Very hopeful. Obviously, you win Game 4. You got a 3-1 lead. And unfortunately, it was great the way it ended because the Komets scored 2 goals in about 2.5 minutes there in the third period to end the game, to send it to overtime. And you lose in double overtime. And I had a very sinking bad feeling because when you lose a game like that in double overtime, the physical and emotional toll that kind of takes over a team, it's like, wow, that can really spiral into a couple of losses, and that's what happened. So, you're just one goal away, and that's going to be something that we're going to have to process over the summer, that literally we needed one more goal, and we're probably moving on to the Western Conference Final.
One of the things that really, and you say one more goal, it just felt like there were just tiny, small lapses that was the difference between winning Games 4, winning Games 5, and I mean, it was, in some of those games, it felt like the Komets played the best 59 minutes of hockey they could. Unfortunately, games are 60 minutes long in regulation.
No, absolutely. That's the issue when you play Toledo. They're a team that when you make a mistake, they are going to beat you, and you cannot make a mistake around those guys. And when they give you an opportunity, you have to bury them because they're a very well, just really throughout the years, they're a very well coached, disciplined, and all of that rolled into one, and they know how to win. So they got talents. So it's you just can't make a mistake against those guys, whether that's defensively or when you have an empty net or an open net to shoot at and you miss the mark, or you get wide open shots in front of the net. You got to get them on net, and that's one thing that we weren't doing there in games 3 and 4.
All right, let's take a look at some of the highlights from games 3, 4, 5, and 6. We got a lot of hockey to go over. I'm impressed that your voice is as good as it is at this point, because there's been a lot of playoff hockey and extra playoff hockey when you talk about that double overtime game. But the Komets, having split in Toledo, you had to feel pretty good coming into Game 3 at the Coliseum this past Monday night.
Yeah, we did, but it's also, I felt we should have won Game 1. You had a chance, you had the lead, you're unable to finish there, but again, that's what Toledo does. They got a lead late in the second period in Game 1, and when they have a lead going into the third period, they just play this shutdown defense where you can't get anything through, and that's what happened. The same thing happened in Game 6, so it was kind of the same mistake repeating itself, but again, you got the split, which is really what you were looking for, and everything was going your way, but man, just one bounce, and you don't get that extra goal, and here we are. The offseason has started.
I want to ask you about Brett Brochu, because the Brett Brochu we saw against Toledo wasn't the same. Was the Brett Brochu we saw in the regular season, but it wasn't the Brett Brochu that we saw in the series against Iowa. So what clicked? I know he was probably fatigued, had been out in Bakersfield, played a lot of hockey. So what was the big difference? Because he was really, despite some of the results at the end, he was really good against Toledo.
He was outstanding. He was dialed in, and he's a guy who's got a lot to prove. His entire hockey career, he was so good in junior but yet he went undrafted. You know, he comes to Fort Wayne. He has to basically be the third goaltender last year. He embraced that role, got to be the starter this year, got a two-way contract with Bakersfield, went up to Bakersfield and was outstanding. And he really, showed off for the scouts and the organization. So he's a young man. He's 22 years old, and to go through all of that over the past, year and a half to 2 years, this kid was wore down mentally and physically, to go up and play all those games. And I mean, not only did he go up to Bakersfield just to play, I mean, he was tasked with trying to get them into the playoffs as well, and he did a fantastic job, and he almost did. And then he's got to, kind of reset, come back to Fort Wayne and get his head right. And it just took him a little bit. I mean, we knew that he was going to be just fine, but I'm glad we had Nathaniel Day to step up and win a game 6 and 7, so Brett Brochu could get that rest.
You saw just a little while ago James Stefan with the power play goal. That power play unit, 4 goals in 22 opportunities in this Toledo series. The penalty kill gave up only 2 and 15 against Toledo, so they had the edge, no doubt about it, and played pretty well. But James was a sniper over there on that left side.
Yeah, he had three power play goals in that series, and he took the spot of Odin Tufto. That was really his play, but he's got a tremendous shot. He's another guy who is a Edmonton prospect who has got a great upside, so glad to see that he was able to get some postseason time. But no, he basically filled in that spot where Odin was right there. They work the puck around to the perimeter. They get isolation there with Odin right there on the face-off dot, and he can one-time it, and he scored 3 times on the power play. So wonderful for him. So, the power play, was a bit of a question mark during that series because you look at all the chances you had. But again, the games are won 5-on-5, and I think we were the better team 5-on-5.
So going into Game 5, as we take a look at some of the highlights, this series is tied 2-2, but as you saw the Tyler Spezia goal in double overtime, that had to hurt a little bit, but you have no rest for the weary because less than 24 hours later, you're back on the ice again.
Yeah, that's just one of those, it's not if you lose the game, it's how you lose. The Komets were down late 2-0, and we knew it wasn't going to be easy, and even in the back of my head, I'm like, we can't go through up 3-1, 3-1 against these guys. So even with about 5 minutes left, I'm calling the game, and the game's 2-0, and I'm like, yeah, you know what, this kind of fits the script. We're going to come back and just win Game 3. But the fact that we get 1 goal and then we score on a penalty shot of all things, which you don't see very often, to tie the game. So now you're riding high, and now you have to play in overtime. No one scores, so now you've just played an extra period of hockey, and you don't get the win. So, I mean, a lot of drain on a team going into that Game 5.
And that's the funny thing to me about overtime in the playoffs is, like, you get nothing for it, right?
Nothing.
If you lose. Where in the regular season, you're like, well, we get a point. Yeah, we force overtime, we get a point. And, no, it's a little more hollow, unfortunately, in the postseason. But in Game 5, this, to me, was the pivotal game of this series. And unfortunately, the Komets came up with a 2-1 loss. But Anthony Petruzzelli, as you saw, gets a goal. Sawyer was a thorn in the side throughout the course of this series. But on the positive note, we didn't hear a whole lot about Brandon Hawkins, did we?
No, Hawkins he went the whole series without a goal.
Yeah,
and that's remarkable that the Komets were able to do that. He got a couple assists there in Game 6, and he had a couple in game number 1, and that was it. I mean, to keep him off the game sheet is incredible. But the kind of the difference maker is they got Tyler Spezia back right before this series started. He was the guy who had 57 points in 51 games, and I think he was really the difference maker. And since the Komets had not seen him a whole lot, he posed a problem, and he did there in Game 6 as he picked up a goal. So. Yeah, you know what? It's just, man, it is one of those things where I'm still processing and looking at these highlights. It's like, how did we lose to these guys? But here we are. The sun came up the next day, and I'm sure the coaches are already getting ready for next season.
It's funny because Josh Ayan, our weekend sports guy here at Wayne TV, made a very astute observation that the talent gap. The positive of this is that the talent gap between Toledo and the Komets closed, I think, but it was just those small minor details that played a big difference.
Yeah, no, 1,000%. I thought we had a better roster, but sometimes better roster, better team. It's 2 different things. Toledo, again, you make a mistake and they capitalize, and that's what they did. So. just one of those things where you're kind of, man, it's like, we were better. Let's look in the mirror. Let's see how we can prove this going forward. So, and I think even, talking to some of the Toledo people after the game, and they were kind of scratching their heads too. It's like, you guys really should have won this series. So I'm happy that they did. But yeah, it's a tough one. This is one of these series, that we're going to talk about and analyze here over the summer.
All right, so we do have a lot to talk about. Let's talk about what the Komets can learn from this. What do you think going forward they will do with roster construction, and what does Jesse take away as the head coach of this team to say, okay, this is what happened this year. How do we take the next step in 2025, 26?
Yeah, I talked to Jesse right after the game, and of course, Game 6, and things are emotional, and I gave him a pat on the back. It was a tremendous season, and even though he was obviously not happy with the result, he said, "Hey, it's progress." And I'm like, 1,000% right. I'm like, we didn't make the playoffs last year. We had 91 points this year, and we were in the hunt to win the division. And the fact that we didn't have home ice, it's one of those things where if we win the division, we get home ice, maybe it's a different story. So that's where you strive. That's the next step. It's like, all right, well, we didn't get Toledo in the playoffs, but hey, next year we'll take them down and we'll win the division. Tremendous. I mean, I think I know again everyone is disappointed that we lost, but you gotta look at the big picture. It's like, yeah, from missing the playoffs, and you got knocked out. Actually, the previous 2 years, you had been knocked out in the first round. You win a round, you move on to the second round, and you know what? You were that close. So yeah, I mean, a lot of positives. I mean, again, disappointing, but. I think knowing Jesse, I know his work ethic. I mean, I'm sure he is already working the phones. He's already got a list. He is already talking to the guys. And, yeah, I'm looking forward to see how we move forward. I mean, Jesse was a guy who won 2 cups down in Florida. And right now, Florida might be the odds on to win 4 straight. So he learned a few things down there in Florida. So I think, not worried at all. I think Jesse is the guy, and very happy that he's here. And I think just keep on moving forward, and I think we're going to be just fine. Yeah.
Now, if you're David Franke, are there any things that you look at roster-wise in construction and say, maybe we need a little bit more of this, maybe we need a little bit more of that? Who are some young guys that they really want to hold on to? I know Josh Grohl got a goal at the end, or in a Game 6 there at the end of the series. Are there any roster things that you want to change in the offseason, or any, I don't want to say glaring holes, but things that they'll say, okay, we need to shore this up, this up, and this up? Talent-wise,
I don't think so.
Yeah.
I think we had the roster we wanted. I mean, outside of the injury to Odin, tough toe, that was the only thing. But no, I think it was constructed very well. I think that definitely towards the end, when you were able to add a Blake Murray, I mean, that was a tremendous find, getting him in a trade. Josh Grohl had a lot of different suitors in this league, and it just shows you that Jesse Galicki is a good recruiter, and he was able to convince him to come to Fort Wayne. So. There's going to be a lot of talent out there come this summer. So, but I mean, you got like a guy like an Alex Aliardi, who is a Fort Wayne guy. He lives here now, so you expect him to come back. Maybe Anthony Petrozelli decides to keep on going, and I think there's other guys, because you got to remember we also got a really good relationship with Bakersfield. If Alex Swetlikoff is re-signed with Bakersfield, maybe he comes back. You still got Nathaniel Day, who is, I would say, maybe more than likely might be back here next year. We'll see.
Okay.
But we've seen what he can do. I'd love to see what he can do in a full season. But I'm sure the Jack Dugans and the Kyle Mayhews and the Darren Brady's, I'm sure they're going to be getting offers to go overseas, and the AHL. So there is a lot of balls going to be going up in the air here during the summer. But no, I mean, I think Fort Wayne is a destination for a lot of players. I know Jack Dugan. I'm sure he could have played for a lot of different teams. But you know what? We let him be Jack Dugan here in Fort Wayne, and we're happy for it.
And Toledo's not that happy about it. I mean, yes, there is a lot of chippiness in that series, but unfortunately, when the season comes to an end, this is kind of one of those positive negatives. The jersey auction is this coming Tuesday night. Let's take a look at some of the details on that. We're talking about doors opening at 6:30 at the Coliseum Expo Hall #2. Bidding starts at 7 o'clock, free for all fans. This marks the kind of official end of the year for the K's. What do you like about the jersey auction? Because it is a chance. The fans have had a couple days to decompress, if you will, as has the team. And it's generally a pretty merry atmosphere no matter what. But like you said, hadn't made the playoffs last year. They hadn't won a playoff series in a while. They do that. I mean, after a couple days, do you refocus and say, okay, like this was actually a pretty good season?
Yeah, it was. And yeah, I think people will realize that. And, you know, I have a lot of fun at the jersey auction because I run the auction. So I have an absolute blast. So even though it is a bummer that we're doing it, but the fact that we do get to do it is also kind of a privilege because a lot of teams, you know, don't have that support, that we're able to do a whole party and, you know, say thank you to the fans, and the players can come out and say thank you to the fans as well. And we raise a lot of money for a lot of good charities. And yeah, I have a ball doing it. It's my chance to get on the microphone, and I get to, you know, talk to the fans, and, you know, a lot of the fans, you know, I know by name. So it's a really a fun time. So it's like, if you've never been to one, I mean, we really do have a good time.
All right. Well, we appreciate all that you've done, coming in every Monday to talk Komets hockey with us. It's been a fun season.
Yeah.
Looking to build on it. Jesse Kalicki and the guys, David Franke, they are building a monster, hopefully, here in Fort Wayne, and they certainly took a step this season. I want to thank our sponsor at Lee's Famous Recipe for allowing us to do this. But for Shane, I'm Glenn, and we'll see you next season here on Komets Corner.
Komets Corner is presented by Lee's Famous Recipe.